It begins not in noise, but in silence. Not in company, but in solitude. Imagine a man sitting alone in a modest room in rural Pennsylvania, his face calm, eyes steady. Not because he's isolated, but because he has chosen it. This is not loneliness. This is power forming. And the truth is, most people fear what that man has embraced, the strength of being alone. From the time we're young, we're told happiness is something shared, found in connection, measured by how many people laugh at our jokes or applaud our success. But what if that's a lie? What if everything we were taught about fulfillment is backwards? What if happiness isn't found in the noise of others but in the silence within? Most men live lives of quiet panic, not because they're weak, but because they are distracted. They search for validation, praise, companionship, not out of abundance, but out of fear. The fear of being alone. The fear of hearing their own thoughts echo too loudly. They mistake dependence for connection. But dependence is bondage, and bondage never brings peace. Psychologically, this fear of being alone is rooted in our biology. Studies from the University of Chicago and UCLA show that loneliness can feel like physical pain. It activates the same regions in the brain that respond to threats and danger. But here's the shift. The mature mind understands that solitude is not loneliness. Solitude is not the absence of people. It is the presence of self. This is not just an inspirational idea. It's a requirement for psychological sovereignty. Thinkers like Carl Jung and Friedrich Nietzsche understood this. Jung spoke of individuation, the process of becoming whole through inner integration. Nietzsche argued that greatness requires the ability to walk alone, unshaken by the opinions of the crowd. So why does this matter? Because until a man can sit with himself, without noise, without distraction, without applause, he will always be at the mercy of others. He will be reactive instead of intentional. He will serve whatever voice shouts loudest. But the man who builds himself in solitude becomes unshakable. He becomes sovereign. He becomes free. If you're still listening, if this idea stirs something in you, understand this. The journey begins now. Not with motivation, not with hype, but with a choice. A choice to stop running from silence. A choice to build your fortress one brick at a time. And that first brick is this truth. If you cannot be happy alone, you will never be truly happy with anyone. So let this be your foundation. Let it shake the beliefs you've clung to. Let it unsettle the comfort you've relied on. Because only when everything false is stripped away can what's true begin to emerge. And what's true is this: your solitude is not your weakness. It is your birthright. It is your starting line. And for the man who dares to claim it, it becomes his weapon. Repeat these words not as a slogan, but as a declaration. My solitude is my fortress. Let that be the beginning. Let that be your oath. Because once you embrace that silence, you don't just survive alone, you thrive. You evolve. You begin to build a life that no one can take from you. There's a hard truth most people never face. Happiness is often nothing more than borrowed noise. The kind of joy that fades when the music stops, when the party ends, when the crowd disappears. But here's the catch. When your sense of peace is borrowed from the world around you, it can be repossessed at any moment. Think about John, a middle-aged man from Milwaukee. He spent his youth chasing every fleeting thrill, relationships, promotions, status symbols. Yet each peak was followed by a deeper valley. Why? Because none of it came from within. It was all tied to the opinions and presence of others. The applause felt good. Until it stopped. Then came the silence, and with it, fear. Most people are terrified of the silence because it exposes them. It reveals the parts of themselves they've been too busy to confront. They fill their days with noise, social media, gossip, plans, anything but stillness. Stillness would mean facing the emptiness, but that emptiness isn't the enemy, it's the door. From a psychological standpoint, this is dependency. Dr. Viktor Frankl, psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, wrote that when a man cannot find meaning within, he becomes vulnerable to being ruled by his environment. He becomes reactionary, chasing validation like a beggar chasing crumbs. And in that chase, he becomes blind to his own strength. But there's an alternative. Susan, a retired Marine Corps officer in Virginia, described her transformation this way. When I stopped needing people to understand me, I became powerful. When I stopped needing them to stay, I became free. That's not detachment. That's sovereignty. It's a reclaiming of agency, a shift from external control to internal command. This doesn't mean rejecting love or community. It means no longer depending on it for identity. It means entering relationships from fullness, not need, from choice, not desperation. Imagine the strength of a man or woman who can love fully, yet remain unshaken if left alone. That is not heartlessness, it is resilience. So here's your next lesson. Remove their power, not with bitterness, but with clarity. Stop expecting others to complete you. Let go of the fantasy that someone else will fill your empty spaces. When you stop needing them, you start seeing them clearly, not as saviors, not as enemies, just as people, flawed, unpredictable, often self-interested, and that understanding liberates you. Why? Because now no one can destroy you by walking away. No one can manipulate you with praise or punish you with absence. You become a person of still waters and iron depths. You don't chase, you don't cling. You observe, you decide, and you build. Let the silence teach you. Let it reveal what you were afraid to see. You are not incomplete. You were simply distracted, and now you return to the truth. You are the builder of your own peace. So say it, out loud or in writing. I fear nothing in silence. Say it until it no longer feels like a lie, until it becomes the bedrock of your identity. Because the man who can sit in silence without fear is the man no one can shake. And once you know that, no one can take it from you, ever. Let's get one thing straight. Solitude is not absence. It's not a void. It's not a lack of people, noise, or connection. Solitude is a tool, a weapon, and in the hands of someone willing to wield it, it becomes the sharpest blade a man can carry. In a small apartment outside Austin, Texas, Thomas, a software engineer in his 40s, shut off his phone for a month. No texts, no news feeds, no distractions. At first, the silence was deafening, but as the days passed, something happened. His thoughts sharpened, his intuition returned. He began to see the patterns in people, in systems, in himself. What had once been noise became signal. What had once been confusion became clarity. Most people flee solitude because it confronts them with their own reflection. They don't like what they see when no one else is watching. So they drown it in entertainment, shallow talk, impulsive scrolling. But you? You are not most people. If you're still here, you are willing to face yourself. Solitude allows you to study, not just books or ideas, but people, patterns, motives, psychology. The quiet gives you a vantage point the crowd never has. You begin to see that most human behavior is predictable, driven by fear, desire, approval, and avoidance, and that predictability becomes your advantage. Niccolo Machiavelli once wrote that men are governed by fear and self-interest. Observe long enough, and you'll find he was right. People do not move randomly. They move for gain, for status, for comfort. When you detach from needing them, you begin to understand them. And when you understand them, you gain influence over them. Here's the paradox. The man who doesn't crave company becomes magnetic. Because others sense his strength, they can feel it. It's in the way he speaks less but says more. It's in the way he can walk away without looking back, and that unnerves them, because most people fear being left, fear being alone, so they cling to the one who does not. Solitude sharpens your presence, it hardens your posture, it deepens your gravity. When you finally speak, people listen, not because you shout, but because they know you've been watching, and they wonder what you've seen. So no, you don't run from the world, you step back to study it, to prepare. To become so solid, so clear, so self-reliant that when you return, you do not beg for a seat at the table. You build your own. And when they see it, they will want to sit with you. But by then, the power dynamic has shifted. You hold the keys. You decide who enters. Understand this clearly. Solitude is not exile. It is elevation. You withdraw not to hide, but to refine. You don't isolate to escape, but to dominate. When the crowd fears silence, you welcome it. And in doing so, you rise. Declare it now, with clarity and intent. Silence sharpens my power. Say it like a man who knows he's building something no one else can see, yet. Because when they finally do, it will already be too late to catch you. There's a moment in every serious transformation where the path narrows, where it demands something from you. Not more effort, not more ambition, but something far more painful. It demands a cut, a letting go. This is where most people turn back, because cutting hurts. Cutting means loss. But for those who continue, for those who truly want to become unshakable, this step is non-negotiable. You must cut away the weakness, all of it. Let's talk about Anna, a high-performing executive in Chicago. She had the title, the corner office, the network. But she also had dead weight, relationships that drained her, habits that dulled her edge, and a constant stream of people who praised her only when she stayed small. The turning point came when she realized something chilling. Many of the people in her life weren't supporting her. They were tolerating her. And the more she grew, the more uncomfortable they became. So she cut. With precision. With pain. With purpose. And when she did, the silence that followed wasn't empty. It was clean. It was pure. And in that silence, she heard her own voice again. For the first time in years. Here's the truth that most won't tell you. Most people around you are not allies. They are anchors. They don't lift you. They hold you just low enough that you won't threaten their comfort. You think they're loyal. But loyalty without growth is dependency. And dependency is death to any man or woman who seeks power. Understand the psychology here. People act in self-interest. That's not cynicism. That's realism. The moment your evolution no longer serves them, many will turn. Not because they're evil, but because their priority isn't your success, it's their stability. And your growth shakes it. So you must become ruthless, not cruel, but decisive. A lion doesn't ask the jackal to stay. He walks forward and lets the jackals scatter. When you strip away the false relationships, the lazy habits, the distractions pretending to be commitments, you begin to taste a different kind of freedom. It feels cold at first, but that coldness, it's clarity. It's clean air. People respect distance more than kindness. Be too available, and you become background noise. Be scarce, and you become valuable. That is not manipulation. That is natural law. Scarcity creates worth. Boundaries create power. So here is your task. Cut, not recklessly, not emotionally, but with surgical focus. What does not elevate you must be removed. What poisons your focus must be extracted. What drags your spirit must be dropped. And when you do, everything changes. Your time becomes yours. Your energy sharpens. Your circle tightens. And the people who remain, those few, will either rise with you or reveal themselves as unworthy. Either way, you win. Say it now, not softly. Say it like a man drawing a line in the sand. I cut away weakness without hesitation. That sentence is not just truth. It's a tool. Use it. Live it. Because until you do, the weight will keep pulling you down. And you? You were not built to crawl. You were built to rise. Now that you've cut the weakness, you stand in a dangerous place, not because of what surrounds you, but because of what's missing. The noise is gone. The anchors have been removed. You are alone. And in that space, most men fall, not from attack, but from apathy. Solitude without structure is decay. It invites the slow death of drifting. This is where discipline must rise, because without discipline, even solitude becomes a prison. But with it, solitude becomes your fortress. Let's examine what that fortress looks like. Picture Michael, a 52-year-old former athlete living in Denver. After his divorce and retirement, he faced the echo chamber of his own mind for the first time in decades. For months, he spiraled. Late nights, empty calories, digital distractions. He wasn't lazy, he was lost. And that loss came from a lack of structure. Then something clicked. He created a schedule, woke at 5:00 a.m. every day, hit the gym before sunrise, cold showers, journaling, studying Stoic philosophy. Within weeks, his clarity returned. His strength, once rooted in his body, now radiated from his mind. He didn't need noise anymore. He had rhythm, and rhythm creates power. Discipline is architecture. Each habit, a brick. Each routine, a reinforced wall. And soon, your entire inner world begins to reflect something few ever build, a fortress that cannot be shaken. Ask yourself, what do most men do when left alone? They scroll, they consume, they numb. Not because they're evil, but because they have no mission. And a man without a mission is prey to anything loud, bright, or easy. But you choose differently. You train your body until pain becomes precision. You feed your mind until confusion becomes clarity. You construct your life deliberately, because every act of discipline is an act of rebellion against mediocrity. Here's the deeper layer. People don't respect your words, they respect your results. When they see your body change, when your presence sharpens, when your tone deepens, and your eyes become still, they won't question what you've built. They'll feel it. And that is power. Power that cannot be faked. But there's more. Discipline isn't just about transformation, it's about control. And control is the highest form of strength. If you can master your hunger, no one can bribe you. If you can master your time, no one can distract you. If you can master your loneliness, no one can break you. This is the difference between living reactively and living as an architect. You don't wait for life to give you peace. You build it daily, silently, relentlessly. So say it now. Say it like you mean it. Discipline is my fortress. Solitude is my weapon. Because when you live that truth, no betrayal can collapse your peace. No loss can crack your focus. And no distraction can breach your walls. You are not escaping the world. You are preparing to command it. And your blueprint begins with discipline. Brick by brick, day by day, this is how empires are built. You've built your fortress. You've carved discipline into your daily existence. But now comes the hardest battle, the one most never win. Not against others, not against circumstances, but against yourself, because a fortress can fall from within, and the fire that burns it down, your own emotions. Think of Daniel, a successful entrepreneur in Seattle. On paper, he had everything: wealth, freedom, influence. But beneath the surface, he was ruled by reaction. A single insult could derail his day. A moment of rejection could send him spiraling. He had built walls, yes, but hadn't tamed the storm inside. That's the truth most avoid. Emotional mastery is not optional, it is foundational. Because a man who cannot rule his inner world will always be conquered, no matter how disciplined he appears on the outside. You can sculpt your body, refine your mind, craft your schedule, but if you still explode in anger, collapse in fear, or beg for validation, you are a slave wearing armor. Let's break it down. Start with fear. Fear is the invisible chain that keeps men in jobs they hate, in relationships that drain them, in routines that suffocate them. Fear whispers, "At least you're not alone." But here's the shift. Fear is a teacher. If you confront it, if you walk straight into what terrifies you, it loses its grip. The more you face it, the smaller it becomes. Next is desire. Desire is what the world uses to control you. Status, sex, approval, reward, they bait you with it. They bait. They know that if they dangle the right carrot, you'll follow. But the man who governs his desires cannot be led. He delays gratification. He trains his instincts. He knows that pleasure isn't power, restraint is. And then comes the most dangerous emotion of all, loneliness. Loneliness breaks more men than failure ever could. It whispers lies, "You're not enough on your own." So men settle. They compromise, they betray their values just to avoid the quiet. But listen carefully. Loneliness is a test. If you pass it, you don't just become stronger. You become invincible. Here's the key. Emotion is not the enemy. Unchecked emotion is. Rage, when controlled, becomes strategy. Fear, when examined, becomes wisdom. Loneliness, when embraced, becomes freedom. But this takes practice. Real, daily training. Meditation, cold exposure, journaling, deliberate discomfort. These are not trends, they are tools. They build the space between stimulus and response, and that space is your throne. When people cannot predict your reaction, they lose their grip on you. When betrayal meets silence, when provocation meets calm, when praise meets indifference, you rise. You become unshakable, not because life gets easier, but because your center holds. Now say this, and mean it: I own my emotions. They do not own me. Write it, breathe it, live it, because the man who controls his emotions does not just survive, he conquers, and the world which once sought to bend him begins to orbit him instead. Emotional control isn't about becoming cold. It's about becoming composed. So when the storm comes, and it will, you remain still. And that stillness, that composure, becomes your weapon. You've built discipline. You've mastered your emotions. You've severed weakness. But now you step into the level most never reach, the realm of the invisible, the art of commanding a room without ever raising your voice. This is the shadow advantage. See, Visible strength earns respect, but invisible strength, that earns fear. And fear, when calibrated with precision, is influence, not the kind that shouts, the kind that controls outcomes without announcing itself. This is what Niccolo Machiavelli hinted at when he said, "It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both." But the highest game, be unreadable. Let's take Jonathan, a litigation attorney in Atlanta. In court, he rarely spoke more than he had to. He didn't interrupt. He didn't posture. He waited, observed, studied. And when he moved, he did so with precision. He didn't win because he was loud. He won because no one could see him coming. He wasn't just present, he was strategic, and that unsettled his opponents far more than any aggressive tactic ever could. The shadow advantage begins with silence. In a world addicted to noise, the man who speaks little commands the most attention. Why? Because silence forces others to guess, to project, to fear what they do not know. Your silence becomes a canvas for their anxiety. That tension becomes your leverage. Next comes detachment. Most men are desperate to be liked, understood, accepted, and in that desperation, they give away their power. You must rise above that. You must learn to observe without absorbing. Let others gossip. Let them rage. Let them plead for attention. Your indifference will expose them. Your calm will rattle them. Then there's selective presence. You are not everywhere. You are not always accessible. You are rare, and what is rare is valuable. When you appear, it should feel like gravity shifted. How? By mastering your absence. When you're gone, they notice. When you return, they listen. Scarcity isn't manipulation, it's economics applied to identity. Dark psychology reveals this. Humans are wired to chase what they cannot fully possess. They are drawn to mystery, to power that doesn't need to announce itself. When you embody this, people start to follow you, not out of love, not even out of agreement, but because they feel smaller in your presence, and instead of resenting it, they revere it. But here's the warning. The shadow advantage cannot be faked. If you pretend to be detached but crave approval, they'll smell it. If you act mysterious but are dying to be noticed, they'll see it. You must live it, fully, consistently, quietly. So say it now, as a vow, not a slogan. I walk in silence and silence obeys me. Say it until your presence speaks louder than your words ever could. Because when others stumble in the light, you will rise from the shadows, unpredictable, unreadable, and unstoppable. Remember, the lion doesn't announce himself, he just appears, and when he does, everything changes. Power. It's the word that dances in every man's mind, but rarely gets spoken with honesty. It's not about money, it's not about applause, it's not about position. Real power is internal, quiet, rooted in something few ever cultivate, self-reliance. To become untouchable, you must become the source of your own strength. That means no betrayal can break you, no rejection can hollow you, no loss can define you. Untouchable does not mean you never feel pain. It means pain doesn't control you. That is a different kind of power, the kind the world cannot take. Look at Rebecca, a clinical psychologist in her late 30s, practicing in Phoenix. Years ago, she was shattered by a personal betrayal. It broke her trust, but it also revealed a truth. She had outsourced too much of her emotional well-being. So she changed. She rebuilt. She stopped handing her peace to people who hadn't earned it. Today, her power is quiet, but undeniable. She is no longer breakable. The untouchable mindset begins with one principle: self-reliance. Do not expect others to give you peace, purpose, or validation. Create it, build it, demand it from yourself, not the world. Dependency is the crack in the foundation. Seal it or collapse. Then comes selective vulnerability. You don't owe anyone full access. Keep a part of yourself locked away, not out of fear, but out of wisdom. Because when people know everything, they can use anything. What they don't know, they can't control. That mystery is your armor. Next, boundaries. The untouchable man or woman is not cruel, but they are decisive. No begging, no explaining, no chasing. Respect is given to those who demand it, not those who ask for it. If someone crosses a line, you don't argue. You end access. That clarity alone terrifies the weak. And then, the crown jewel of this path, emotional detachment. This isn't numbness, it's poise. You feel everything, but react only when it serves your purpose. Insults don't shake you. Absence doesn't haunt you. Praise doesn't seduce you. That makes you dangerous, because you become immune to manipulation. Dark psychology shows this clearly. People are drawn to what they can't predict, they respect what they can't influence, and they fear what they can't control. The more detached you are from needing them, the more they try to earn you. The paradox: the man who doesn't need attention gets the most of it. So here's the mantra, etched in steel, not sentiment. Nothing touches me. I command myself. Say it not as a defense, but as a declaration, because when you reach this level, you're no longer reacting to life, you're shaping it. And remember, this isn't isolation. This is independence. You will still love, still connect, still build. But now, it's by choice, not need. And that's what makes you untouchable. Power earned through solitude is not loud. It doesn't need to be. It walks into a room and shifts the temperature, and when the world tests you, and it will, you'll remain steady. Because you weren't built by them. You were built despite them. That is the untouchable path, and if you're still walking it, you're already ahead of 99% of the world. You've walked through solitude. You've sliced away the unnecessary. You've learned the discipline of silence and the weaponization of presence. Now you arrive at the final stage, the one few dare to reach. This is not just about surviving, it's about ruling, not others, but yourself. This is the crown of sovereignty. Sovereignty is a word rarely spoken today, and even more rarely lived. It means absolute self-rule. No external force, opinion, or system controls you. You are the author of your code, the master of your domain, the king of your mind. And this crown? It isn't handed to you. It must be forged. Consider James, a 58-year-old architect from Portland. After decades of building structures for others, he realized he'd never built a life for himself. He had followed expectations. He had conformed. He had checked every box: career, family, security. But something gnawed at him. None of it had been chosen with intention. It had all been inherited. So he dismantled it, slowly, thoughtfully. Then he started over, not from rebellion, but from clarity. Today, his life is smaller, quieter, but entirely his. Most men exist inside systems built by others: educational systems, corporate systems, cultural scripts. They inherit routines they never question. But sovereignty demands you question everything: your time, your habits, your beliefs. What serves your purpose stays. What doesn't gets removed, ruthlessly. Here's what Machiavelli understood. Power does not belong to the moral or the kind. It belongs to the prepared, the disciplined, the relentless. Sovereignty is not a gift, it is seized. And it begins the moment you stop waiting for permission. The sovereign man decides. He decides how he moves, what he tolerates, what he builds. No excuses, no blame. He understands that the world owes him nothing, so he creates everything. From his energy to his wealth to his reputation, every part of his life bears his signature. But sovereignty has a cost. It demands sacrifice. You cannot be sovereign and addicted. You cannot be sovereign and ruled by impulse. You cannot be sovereign and desperate for praise. The crown is heavy because it isolates you from the comforts most cling to. Yet that weight is what gives you presence. It's why people listen when you speak. It's why they follow your lead, mirror your habits, adopt your pace, not because you demand it, but because you embody it. Sovereignty is magnetic. When lived fully, it makes others orbit you without understanding why. Here is your new law. I wear the crown of my own life. Say it. Print it on the walls of your mind, because until you do, you're still waiting for the world to anoint you, and the world never will. Sovereignty isn't about domination, it's about independence. It's not about ruling others, it's about being so fully self-governed that the noise of the world can't penetrate your focus. And from that space, you build a rhythm that no one can disrupt. So what will you do with this crown? That is the next question. Because power without purpose is chaos. But power with purpose, that changes everything. You don't need approval. You need a mission. And sovereignty is the foundation that makes that mission unstoppable. Now comes the final command, not the end, but the beginning of a new code. A way of living that removes the mask, burns the script, and rewrites your identity in the ink of solitude, strength, and unbreakable intent. This is where your transformation becomes permanent, where untouchable becomes who you are, not something you chase, but something you exude. Let's erase the last illusions. Happiness from others is fragile. It can be given, yes, but more often, it's taken. Lovers leave. Friends forget. Society shifts. The man who anchors his joy in them builds his house on sand. And when the storm hits, as it always does, he falls. Every single time. But the man who builds happiness from within, that man cannot be moved. His peace is not soft. It is not sweet. It is not poetic. It is steel. It says, even if you all walk away, I remain. That kind of happiness terrifies people because they cannot influence it. This is the secret of true freedom. Nothing external can take from you what you've built in solitude. It's what Carl Jung meant when he said, who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes. Most men dream. You are now awake. But be warned, this shift will not go unnoticed. The people around you will feel it. Your silence will unnerve them. Your detachment will confuse them. Your refusal to need them will offend them. They will call you cold, arrogant, emotionless. That is their fear speaking, their dependency showing. Do not shrink to make them comfortable. Do not dull your edge to fit into their softness. The world has enough agreeable men. What it needs are lions, and lions walk alone until it's time to strike. So what now? You've embraced solitude, you've ruled your emotions, you've cut the weak ties, you've claimed your crown. Now you must create. Not just survive, not just endure, but build. Build something the world can't ignore. An empire of habit, a legacy of thought, a structure so solid that no betrayal, no loss, no crisis can shake it. The fortress is now yours. The tools are in your hands. Discipline, clarity, composure, and purpose. With them, you are no longer a man chasing life. You are a man shaping it. So here is your final declaration. Speak it with intent, not just to me, but to the part of you that once doubted. I am untouchable. I am sovereign. I am the fortress. Stamp those words into the ground like a battle flag. Because from here, everything changes. Your future is no longer inherited. It is designed. And the man who designed it, he bows to no one. Now, if you felt this shift inside you, if something stirred, something woke up, then this is your space. Like the video, subscribe to the channel. And in the comments, I want you to declare your identity, not for vanity, for alignment, for commitment. Because this isn't entertainment, this is transformation. And you're no longer the man the world once knew. You are the fortress, and the world will soon learn to respect what you've built in silence, power. That word has echoed through history, yet few truly understand it, not because they're incapable, but because they never question the source. They think power is granted, that it arrives with a title, a promotion, applause. But real power? It is claimed, and it begins with a single decision, to no longer need anyone. Think of Carla, a high-level consultant based in Boston. For years, she relied on her clients' approval, her colleagues' praise, even her family's validation to feel secure. When one of her biggest contracts fell apart due to betrayal, she spiraled because her power was borrowed. She hadn't built it within. And when she realized that truth, everything changed. She didn't chase replacement contracts. She rebuilt her confidence from the inside. Within a year, she returned stronger, sharper, and more in control than ever before. Why? Because this time, her strength wasn't negotiable. When you are untouchable, people can leave, but you remain. Praise can stop, but your fire doesn't. Loss can hit, but you won't collapse. That's not indifference. That's inner control. Let's go deeper. When you're truly sovereign, the betrayal no longer surprises you. The absence no longer wounds you. The storm no longer frightens you, because you planned for all of it. You expect no one to rescue you. You know your life is yours to rule. Machiavelli didn't write for men who wanted comfort. He wrote for those who wanted command. And here's the reality. Most people will never wear the crown. Not because they aren't worthy, but because they won't pay the price. Solitude, discipline, detachment, clarity. That price scares them. But for the few who pay it, what they gain is something most never taste: complete freedom. Here's a truth from dark psychology. People don't follow the nicest man. They follow the most certain man. The one who moves with precision, not apology. The one who doesn't explain himself. The one who acts from vision, not permission. You must become that man or woman. But remember, Power without purpose is chaos. So once you've claimed your strength, you must decide where to aim it. What will you build that cannot be ignored? What will your life stand for long after your presence fades? Because that is where legacy begins, not in words, but in willpower, lived daily. So here's the question only you can answer. What will your empire look like? Maybe it's your business, maybe it's your family, maybe it's a mission, a message, a movement. But whatever it is, it must come from you. Not from tradition, not from guilt, not from expectations, from choice, from sovereignty. Declare this now, clearly and finally. I do not wait, I decide. I do not beg, I build. I do not follow, I lead. That mindset is your crown. Wear it, and don't just wear it when it's easy. Wear it when it's hard, when you're doubted, when you're alone, when you're tested. Because if you can hold it through the fire, nothing can stop what comes next. You are no longer asking the world to give you a seat. You've built your own table. And now, the world waits for your next move. By now, you've likely felt the shift, not just intellectually, but physically. In your chest, your posture, your voice. That's the presence of power settling in. But we're not done. Because there's one final battlefield where most fall. Distraction. Power without focus is like a sword left in its sheath. Sharp, yes, but useless. The modern world is not designed to make you powerful. It's designed to keep you distracted. Notifications, opinions, obligations, all of it pulling your attention in 1,000 directions, scattering your energy until nothing remains. Now meet Greg, a former financial advisor from San Diego. In his early 40s, burnout hit him like a freight train, not because he lacked ambition, but because he said yes to everything. Every lunch, every favor, every distraction that wore a mask of opportunity. His life wasn't bad, it was diluted. So he made a change. Ruthless time control, hard boundaries, one goal, one mission. Today, he works half the hours, generates twice the results, and commands his time like a sovereign commands his kingdom. You must do the same. You must realize this truth. Every time you say yes to something small, you say no to something great. And a sovereign does not trade greatness for noise. He guards his focus like a king guards his treasure, because it is. Here's what most men misunderstand. Discipline is not just about action, it's about exclusion. The ability to ignore, to let go, to walk past what tempts you. Focus is emotional strength. It's the ability to stay calm when distraction knocks and chaos demands your attention. So create your code. Wake early. Move with intention. Create more than you consume. Read more than you scroll. Think more than you speak. If it doesn't serve your mission, it doesn't belong. Period. When you live this way, something incredible happens. People begin to respect your time, not because you ask them to, but because they can feel your clarity. And clarity is rare. It intimidates the scattered. It draws the disciplined. It creates distance between you and the average. But know this, your focus will be tested. Friends will pull. Guilt will whisper. Doubt will creep in. That's why you must anchor your purpose so deeply that nothing can shake it. Because the moment you hesitate, the world rushes in. Here is your commitment, carved in fire. I guard my focus. I protect my time. I choose my mission. Say it, mean it, because from this place you stop reacting and start building with precision. Your actions become aligned, your results become undeniable, and your life begins to reflect something most people never touch: deliberate power. Distraction is the tool of the weak. Focus is the weapon of the sovereign. You know which side you belong to. Now live like it. And remember, sovereignty is not just the crown on your head. It's the shield around your time, the gate around your energy, and the compass that guides your every move. Protect it like your life depends on it, because it does. At this point, you may feel distance forming between you and the world you once knew. Friends don't understand your silence. Family questions your discipline. Coworkers sense something's changed, but can't explain what. This is normal. This is expected. This is the price of elevation. You've outgrown the rhythm most still dance to, not because you're better, but because you're clearer. And clarity, when placed next to confusion, always creates tension. Take Alicia, a former school principal from North Carolina. When she began her journey of transformation, she assumed support would follow. It didn't. Her new discipline intimidated old friends. Her refusal to gossip or entertain drama was seen as arrogance. Her presence became too sharp for soft spaces. At first, she questioned herself. Then she remembered. Growth often looks like betrayal to those who refuse to change. This is where you must stand firm. You are not responsible for making others comfortable with your power. You are responsible for living it. Because the truth is, most people don't fear your silence. They fear what it says about their noise. The psychology here is simple. When someone evolves, those around them are forced to confront their own stagnation. Some will rise with you, most will resist you, not out of hatred, but out of fear. Your change reflects their refusal, and rather than change themselves, they will try to pull you back into their comfort zone. This is where sovereignty becomes more than a mindset. It becomes your shield. You do not explain yourself. You do not justify your silence. You do not lower your standards to be digestible. You live by your code, and that alone becomes your signal. Understand this. Loneliness at this stage is no longer isolation. It's refinement. It's the filtering out of what no longer serves your purpose. Your circle tightens, your mission sharpens, and your presence deepens. So what do? You stop waiting for them to understand. You stop seeking validation from those committed to mediocrity. You stop dimming your light to fit rooms you've already outgrown. Instead, you commit to the path, fully, because the world respects those who walk alone with purpose. And over time, your presence will no longer provoke resistance. It will invite alignment. The right people will find you, not because you chased them, but because you became the kind of person who no longer needed to. Say this now as a contract with your future. I do not shrink. I do not explain. I rise in silence. Write it. Live it. Let it echo in every room you walk into. Because from this place, you don't just influence. You transform, not through force, but through presence. Remember, the mountain does not move for the climber. The climber changes to reach the summit. You are the mountain now. And the higher you rise, the fewer will follow. But the view? The view is everything. So climb, not for applause, not for revenge, but because the top is where you belong. And the solitude? That's no longer a sacrifice. It's your sanctuary. Now you stand at the edge of a new existence, not ruled by reaction, not governed by need, but shaped entirely by intention. But before we reach the final transformation, you must confront one last illusion, the belief that power and peace cannot coexist. Most people think strength comes with chaos. Isaiah, that you must be aggressive to lead, ruthless to rise, detached to win. But this belief is flawed. True power does not create noise. It creates calm. It creates gravity. It doesn't move wildly. It moves deliberately. Let's return to Marcus, a former military strategist now living a quiet life in Montana. He once led teams in high-stakes operations across the globe. Back then, people mistook his calm for coldness, but what they didn't see was that his calm was precisely what kept others alive. Today, he applies that same composed intensity to business. His competitors still talk louder, but he moves smarter, and he always wins. That's the paradox of untouchable strength. It's not loud, it's not theatrical, it's not impulsive, it's composed, focused, measured. This is the balance you must master: strength without aggression, detachment without cruelty, silence without emptiness. Psychology calls this regulated dominance. It's the ability to influence without intimidation, to lead without noise. When others are emotional, you remain still. When others react, you calculate. And when you finally move, you don't ask, you act. And here's the secret most miss. People follow the stillest mind in the room. In a world of panic, stillness is power. In a room of chaos, certainty is influence. You become the anchor, not because you demand it, but because you are unshaken. This is where sovereignty becomes felt. Your presence begins to shape environments, not through force, but through certainty. People lean in when you speak, not because you shout, but because your words carry weight. Your silence creates space. Your stillness creates safety. And from that space, you do what most men never attempt. You create. Not from fear, not from ego, from vision. A life, a legacy, a standard so elevated it becomes untouchable. Say this now. My strength is calm. My presence is power. My silence is command. Let it settle into your bones. Let it become the rhythm of your day. Because the more you live it, the less you'll need to say. And the more you build from this place of power within stillness, the more the world will bend, not to your demand, but to your design. You're not just a builder now, you are a shaper, a quiet architect of your reality. And the storm outside, it no longer matters, because inside there is only clarity. Remember this, the final form of power is not control over others, it's control over yourself. The rest is just noise. And noise cannot touch a man who has learned to master silence. This is the closing chapter, but not the end. Rather, it's the beginning of the life most men will never touch, the life of the untouchable. The man or woman who walks through the world not begging for approval, not chasing attention, but radiating quiet authority. Not by accident, but by design. You've come far. Through solitude, through silence, through the fire of cutting away weakness and the forge of building discipline. You've stepped into emotional mastery, embraced strategic absence, claimed sovereignty, and learned to lead not with volume but with gravity. Now ask yourself, who are you becoming? Not in theory, in truth. Are you still defined by the old patterns, the fear of rejection, the hunger for noise? Or have you stepped across the threshold into full ownership of your life? Look at Ethan, a man in his late 40s from Ohio. Once plagued by people-pleasing and indecision, he now runs a multi-million-dollar company in complete silence. No social media, no public image, just discipline, systems, and precision. His employees describe him not as loud or charismatic, but as immovable, calm, commanding, and what he's built, no one can tear down. Because it wasn't built for applause, it was built in solitude. This is your final test, not to speak, not to explain, but to live it, daily, relentlessly, to let your life be the proof of everything you've claimed. You no longer wait for life to validate you, you validate yourself. You no longer rely on the world to approve you, you approve your own mission. And you no longer fear standing alone, because alone is where you became unstoppable. Now, let the world say what it will. Let them call you cold. Let them misunderstand your silence. Let them misinterpret your distance. You do not owe them understanding. You owe yourself results. Because power is not always loud. Sometimes it walks quietly with deliberate steps and unshakable focus. And when it speaks, it changes everything. You are that voice now. So write this, not for the algorithm, but for yourself. I am untouchable. I am sovereign. I am the fortress. Stamp it into the ground. Speak it into your mirror. Carry it in your actions. Because these words are not motivation. They are identity. You've earned them, not with fantasy, but with sacrifice. With hours alone. With choices others didn't have the strength to make. And if you're still here, you already know what comes next. Like the video. Subscribe to this channel, and in the comments tell the world where you now stand. Speak not for attention, but for alignment, for the few who recognize what you've built in silence. Because this channel, this space, is not for the average. It's not for the weak. It's not for those who flinch when solitude speaks. It's for the builders, the quiet warriors, the ones who rise without applause and win without noise. You came here looking to be happy alone. What you found was power alone. And now, happiness follows you, not because you chased it, but because you became the kind of man it cannot ignore. You are untouchable. Now go live like it, and let the world adjust.